Hi, this is Denise Mathew, and welcome to the first installment of The Energy of Emotion. Today I'll be introducing the Solar Plexus and its place in the human design body graph, as well as discussing the basics of being defined or undefined emotionally. So please join me as we begin to unwind and pull apart the interesting but oftentimes confusing energy of emotion. Our feelings can be our biggest downfall or our greatest luxury. There are moments that we want to forget forever, and also times that we want to never forget. Emotions come in all shapes and sizes. Some people have big, exuberant emotions, and others always seem to have everything in control. And of course, there are many who fall in between those spectrums. But if there's anything that we can say about emotion, is that it's a driving force for all we do. We chase after those things that make us feel joyful, happy, and sometimes even blissful, as if they're the prize, the treasure at the end of the rainbow. Sorrow, rage, grief, anxiety, they all show up when we least want it, which is usually always, because we as a society are trained to always be searching for the next high, the next goal, the next good thing that will make our life complete. We are trained to be happy, but if there's any concept that will set us free and get us off the happiness hamster wheel, it's that there's balance in all things in life, and that without the sadness, we wouldn't understand the delight. Without anxiety, we wouldn't understand peace. Ultimately, there cannot be light unless there is darkness too. The dream that we all hold close to our heart is that the feeling good part of life will last longer than the down parts, and that's understandable. But how could we ever taste the sweetness of happiness without the periods of disquiet? In fact, a beautiful piece of music would be nothing without the pauses in the notes. If there's anything that we can count on in our life, it's that it's ever changeable, and so too are our emotions. And more than understanding our unique emotional way of being is allowing ourselves the space and time to feel the way we need to feel based on our authentic selves. Emotions rule the world, quite literally. How we feel in any given moment can shift our reality and the reality of many people around us. Something as simple as an argument can be ruled by emotion, but so too can the most stunning works of art, exquisite musical compositions, and loving conversations. Ultimately, when we learn to understand ourselves better, we can begin to see those around us in a different light as well. In human design, the solar plexus or emotional center is the place where all the secrets about how we experience emotion lie. But before we can go deep into what it all means, we first need to get a brief idea about the solar plexus, what it is, and how it works. The human design body graph consists of 9 centers. While each is important in its own way, in this series we'll be focusing on the solar plexus, also called the emotional center. The names can be used interchangeably, but they all refer to the same thing, the center where we will experience our emotion. And just like all other parts of the chart, understanding our unique configuration gives us the information we need to navigate the world and to also see how we personally experience emotion. When it comes to the solar plexus, there are 2 states of being. The first is when it's open or undefined, and the second is when it's closed or defined. Since the colors of the centers in the human design always have the same specific colors, when they are defined and also when they are open, it's easy to see in any body graph when the center is defined. It will always be a brown triangle on the right-hand side of the body graph. And when it's white, that tells us that it's undefined or open. In fact, any centers that are white in a body graph are considered open or undefined centers. According to the rave statistics on the Jovian website, approximately 47% of people are defined emotionally, or roughly 50%. So that means that half of us are defined emotionally while the other half are undefined. What it also means are the chances are pretty high that you will have people who are both defined and undefined in your life. When we talk about an open center of any kind, we're talking about a more fluid expression of the energy in that center. Because based on human design theory, the energy that is expressed in the center that is open is dependent on the people around us, the electromagnetics or connections of the people that are in our lives, and also the transits of the planets. We can get into all the other topics later, but for now, let's talk about the energy that someone with an open center absorbs from people around them. So when we talk about having an open emotional center, it means that the emotions that you experience are influenced by people who are around you. Basically, people who have defined emotional centers. While most of the emotions that we feel come from the solar plexus, there is one caveat, and that is to talk about fear and anxiety that can also be found in another part of the chart, called the spleen. It's not like we can pull apart every emotion that we feel and designate an area that it's coming from, but if we have some idea of the mechanisms, we can experiment and see how it all works for us as individuals. So when you have an open solar plexus or any open center, Your center can feel the impact of all the energy flowing around you, all the energy of other people. So when someone is out in the world, they're being inundated with emotional energy. So potentially by the time they get out of the public, they could have collected a lot of emotional energy, and this can leave some people a little overwhelmed. I say some people because we also have to take into consideration the conditioning field or the environment where you grew up, where you went to school, the friends you had. The list is endless. All of the energy that you were conditioned to or you experienced when you were growing up or in your environment can become familiar to you. So you could think of it as living in a very busy city as opposed to living in a very quiet environment like in the country. So if we take someone who grew up to the sounds of birds in the morning and put them in a city where sirens, horns, and general noise is happening, it makes sense that that person will naturally feel out of sorts or even overwhelmed. This is exactly what can happen when someone is undefined emotionally, who grew up in an environment with less emotional energy in their surroundings, suddenly comes in contact with people with big emotional waves. So when we talk about a big emotional wave and being defined emotionally, it sounds like the energy is more stable and there'd be less fluctuation in the emotional energy because there's no absorbing of the energy of other people. That's not exactly how it works, because although someone with a defined emotional center has their own fixed way of experiencing emotion, every emotionally defined solar plexus comes with its own emotional wave. So although there is a stability of having your own personal wave, the wave isn't stable and is in fact always in the state of flux, or in other words, you're always riding some part of your wave. And to add to that point, there are 3 distinctive types of waves that have their own set of characteristics. Although we can say that all waves have a low part and a high part, how they reach those spots varies dramatically. We can see that some waves have extreme highs and extreme lows. They would be the individual waves, and those would be considered big emotional waves. But the big emotional waves have a lot of creativity built in them as well. Other waves, like the collective waves, have a slow climb up and a rapid drop, and then they slowly start to climb again. A tribal wave is something that undulates quietly like a pilot light on a stove until something triggers it, and it's like turning on the heat to full blast. Once again, the importance of knowing the most basic parts of how we are defined individually helps us understand why one day we can feel amazing and at the top of our game and the next be in the pits of despair. Or why we feel out of sorts when we've been out at a party when we should be happy because we had fun at the party, but for some reason we just feel overwhelmed. So something as simple as knowing if you're emotionally defined or open can be a great help to understand how we express our emotions. But since there's so much to unpack with the solar plexus, I'm going to leave it there. Don't worry, you'll get all the information you need, because as the series goes on, we'll go into depth with more details about the solar plexus, how the gates that you have colored in black, red, or black and red color your emotional expression, as well as how each emotional wave can feel when you have it defined. For now, I'm going to close, and I'll be back soon with another installment of the Energy of Emotion. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you soon.